Okay, so you're back. Because you want more of those deep dives.
Shelley's up for a good deep dive.
Well, perfect. Because we are about to plunge headfirst into one of those really pivotal chapters of Frankenstein. Chapter 18 to be exact.
A turning point. This is where things start to get really interesting.
Exactly. We're not just going to rehash the plot, though. We're going deeper. We want to get inside Victor's head.
See what makes him tick. Understand what's driving his decisions at this critical moment in the story.
Exactly. Because remember, he's back in Geneva. He's with his family. You'd think he'd be relieved, happy even.
Back in familiar territory, safe and sound.
But, and this is a big but, he's carrying this monstrous secret, this promise he made to his creature that weighs on him constantly.
A promise he's desperate to break free from.
But the consequences of breaking that promise,
Yeah.
well, they terrify him.
The creature's threat of revenge. It's very real to him.
So he's stuck, caught between a rock and a hard place. And as the days turn into weeks, we see him struggling, really struggling with this internal battle.
A battle he's fighting entirely on his own.
And to make matters even more complicated, two major pressures are building around him.
Oh, absolutely. And they're both coming from such important parts of his life.
Exactly. On the one hand, there's his father, who's really pushing for him to marry Elizabeth.
It's a natural desire, isn't it? Seeing your son find happiness and stability after so much turmoil.
But Victor's response to that pressure? It's incredibly complex. We'll get into that.
Layers upon layers of internal conflict there.
And then there's this sudden decision. Victor announces he's going to travel to England.
Seemingly out of the blue.
But what he tells his family about this trip, it's not the whole story. Not even close.
So many hidden motives at play there.
And we're going to untangle them all right here, right now, ready to dive in.
Let's get started.
Okay, so first things first. Let's talk about Victor's return to Geneva, this homecoming. It's not exactly a joyful affair, is it?
No, not quite the heartwarming reunion his family probably hoped for. We learn that his health has really deteriorated.
Makes sense, right? After everything he's experienced.
I mean, it's been a roller coaster of trauma for him.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. When he manages to put that dreadful promise, the one to his creature, out of his mind, just shove it aside for a bit, his spirits actually lift.
Almost like he's catching his breath.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fleeting. This isn't a true recovery.
So it's temporary relief.
Very much so. Because these periods of feeling a little bit better, they're constantly interrupted. By what? Deep melancholy.
Like a shadow that keeps returning.
Yes. And what does he do during these dark periods? Retreats into himself, isolates himself, seeks comfort in solitude.
So the lake becomes his sanctuary. Remember how often he mentions spending days out there all alone in his boat?
Absolutely. Surrounded by the vastness of the water, almost like he's trying to find a space big enough to contain his turmoil, trying to escape his inner demons, even if it's just for a little while. But his father,
Yeah.
well, he sees through it, doesn't he?
Oh, a parent's intuition is a powerful thing. He notices that despite these moments of apparent improvement, Victor is still profoundly unhappy, withdrawn.
There's this underlying sadness that just won't go away.
Exactly. And this leads Victor's father to start thinking, searching for explanations. And naturally, his mind goes to Elizabeth.
Makes sense. They've been practically promised to each other since childhood.
Right. So the father starts to wonder, could it be that Victor is having second thoughts, doubts about the marriage, hesitations he's not voicing?
Or even he contemplates the possibility that Victor might be in love with someone else. Imagine that. Secretly harboring feelings that conflict with his engagement.
It really shows the depth of the father's concern. He's truly trying to understand the source of his son's unhappiness.
He even starts to question himself. There's this touching moment where he expresses his long-held hope for their union, calling it the tie of our domestic comfort and the stay of my declining years. He's thinking about his own old age, wanting his son settled and happy.
And he reminds Victor of their shared history, their lifelong connection, how they practically grew up together, how well-suited they seem to be.
Like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Destined.
But then comes this incredible moment of self-awareness. The father wonders out loud if his own expectations, his desire for this marriage, could be the problem.
Wow. So he's actually questioning if he might have inadvertently caused Victor distress by pushing this relationship.
Yes, he even suggests that maybe by emphasizing their closeness, he made Victor see Elizabeth more as a sister than a potential wife.
It's huge. He's putting Victor's happiness above his own hopes and dreams.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful display of paternal love and understanding.
And how does Victor respond to all of this?
He offers reassurance, strong reassurance, tells his father, "I love my cousin tenderly and sincerely. I never saw any woman who excited, as Elizabeth does, my warmest admiration and affection. My future hopes and prospects are entirely bound up in the expectation of our union."
Sounds pretty convincing, right?
Oh, absolutely. And for the father, it's exactly what he needed to hear. It brings him immense relief. He sees it as a sign that Victor is finally starting to emerge from the darkness.
The key to dispelling the gloom.
But for us, the listeners who know the truth, well, there's this jarring dissonance, because his words, while sincere sounding, are a carefully constructed facade.
Hiding the turmoil underneath.
Exactly. Victor is horrified at the very suggestion of an immediate marriage. He feels trapped by that solemn promise he made to the creature, a promise he's utterly terrified to break.
And he can't tell his father the truth?
Yeah?
Can't explain why he's so hesitant?
He's completely isolated by his secret, unable to share his burden even with the person who loves him most.
It's heartbreaking, really. And this suggestion of an immediate marriage, it just pushes him further into that corner.
The father's reasoning is perfectly understandable, though. He's thinking about the recent tragedies the family has suffered, his own advancing age and health. He points out that Victor is financially independent, so there's no need to delay for practical reasons.
Practicalities.
But he does add that crucial caveat, that he wouldn't want to dictate Victor's happiness, wouldn't pressure him into something he wasn't ready for.
It shows his respect for Victor's autonomy.
Absolutely. But for Victor, this whole conversation is a nightmare. He's caught between this deep yearning for peace and happiness, the kind he imagines he could find with Elizabeth, and the horrifying reality of his situation.
It's a terrible dilemma. The desire for normalcy versus the monstrous secret he carries.
And this secret is a poison. It's eating away at him, preventing him from experiencing any real joy.
Okay, so we've got that major source of tension. Now let's talk about the second one, Victor's decision to travel to England. Because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, this trip becomes his escape route, his way of trying to navigate this impossible situation, although it involves a whole lot of deception.
A carefully constructed lie.
Victor claims that he needs to travel to England, or at least establish some detailed correspondence with English philosophers. Why? Because he needs access to specific scientific discoveries, things he claims are material to my success in his work.
But it's not just about the knowledge, is it?
Not even close. This journey is all about avoidance. Victor admits to feeling this insurmountable aversion to working on this loathsome task at home.
It's too close to his family. Too close to everything he wants to protect.
Exactly. He's terrified of accidental disclosure. He knows he wouldn't be able to hide the emotional turmoil this work would unleash.
Like a dam about to burst.
And the stakes are incredibly high. The slightest slip could expose his horrifying secret and put his family in unimaginable danger.
So England becomes this physical and emotional buffer, a place where he can bury himself in his work without the constant fear of discovery.
It's a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control. And in his darkest moments, he even fantasizes about the creature dying while he's away. Imagine that.
Wow, that's how desperate he is to be free of this burden. He actually allows himself to imagine this accident that would put an end to my slavery forever.
It really highlights the extent of his torment. This glimmer of hope, however dark and twisted it might be, is all he has to cling to.
So when he presents this idea of traveling to England to his father, he's incredibly careful.
Oh, he crafts this plausible narrative, plays the part perfectly.
And his father, bless his heart, is just so relieved to see Victor showing any interest in something, anything that might bring him a little joy that he doesn't suspect a thing.
After witnessing months of Victor's deep melancholy, the sudden desire to travel, to engage with the world again, it must have felt like a huge step forward.
A sign that he's finally healing.
And they agree on a time frame for the trip, which is rather open-ended, a few months, maybe even a year. But then comes the father's well-intentioned, though ultimately complicating, gesture. He arranges for Cleval to accompany Victor as far as Strasbourg.
And Victor had no idea this was happening.
Nope, it's a surprise. And Victor's initial reaction? Resentment. He sees Clerval's presence as an intrusion on the solitude he needs for this horrific work.
He needs that isolation.
But then he has a change of heart. He starts to see the potential benefits of having Clerval by his side.
The distraction.
Exactly. A way to keep those lonely, maddening reflections at bay, and maybe, just maybe, an unwitting shield against any unwanted encounters with the creature.
It's a desperate hope. But at this point, Victor will take any comfort he can get.
Absolutely. And through all of this, the agreement about his marriage to Elizabeth remains firm. That's still the plan. They'll marry as soon as Victor returns from England.
It's this distant beacon of hope for him, a reward he's promised himself after completing this detested toil.
A consolation for all the suffering he's endured.
He dreams of being enfranchised from my miserable slavery, claiming Elizabeth as his wife, and finally forgetting the past.
But it's a hope built on a foundation of deceit. And deep down, Victor knows it.
It's a bittersweet prospect, and even as he clings to this idea of a future with Elizabeth, he can't shake the fear, the anxiety of leaving his family unprotected while he's gone.
The creature promised to follow him, right? So there's that twisted sense of security in knowing that his family won't be immediately targeted.
It's like he's using his own suffering as a shield for them.
But the thought of being relentlessly pursued by his own creation across Europe, that's terrifying in its own right.
A constant shadow looming over him.
Exactly. So the departure finally arrives. It's the latter end of September, and the scene is filled with this unspoken tension. Elizabeth, despite putting on a brave face, is clearly worried. Her farewell to Victor is tearful, silent.
She senses something's wrong, but she doesn't know the extent of it.
And Victor, lost in his own world of darkness and despair, is almost oblivious to her emotional state. His focus is entirely on his destination and the grim task that awaits him there.
Consumed by his mission.
Even the beautiful scenery they encountered during their initial travels fails to move him. He's so fixated on his own dreary imaginations that he can't appreciate the beauty around him.
His creation has poisoned his ability to experience joy.
It's tragic, really. And this inability to connect with the world becomes even more apparent when they arrive in Strasbourg. We see this stark contrast between Victor's reaction and Clerval's.
Clerval is like a breath of fresh air. He's excited by everything, the thin rise, the changing landscape. He even exclaims, "This is what it is to live." It's a stark contrast to Victor's numbness.
It highlights the tragedy of Victor's self-imposed isolation. He's surrounded by beauty and simple pleasures, but he can't experience any of it. He's haunted by a curse that shut up every avenue to enjoyment.
It's like he's trapped in a cage of his own making.
And he even acknowledges that Clerval's perspective, as documented in his journal, would be a far more accurate and engaging account of their journey, because Clerval actually sees the beauty. He feels it.
But their journey down the Rhine, by boat, offers a brief respite, even for Victor.
As they travel through Mannheim and Mainz, the landscape transforms. It becomes this picturesque tapestry of ruined castles and lush vineyards. Even Victor admits to feeling a sense of tranquility during this part of the trip.
A moment of peace.
But Clerval, of course, is completely enthralled. He compares the Rhine favorably to the Swiss landscapes they both know so well. He talks about the unique charm of the riverbanks, points out specific details, the dramatic castles perched on the cliffs, the islands covered in foliage, the workers in the vineyards, the villages nestled along the shore.
He sees a harmony between nature and human activity. It resonates deeply with him.
And there's this beautiful moment where he quotes from Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey, that passage about nature being a feeling and a love that had no need of a remoter charm by thought supplied or any interest unborrowed from the eye. It perfectly captures Clerval's profound connection with the natural world.
It's so pure, so innocent, and it makes Victor's immediate reflection all the more poignant. He knows what's coming for Clerval, and it breaks his heart.
It's a foreshadowing of the tragedy that's about to unfold, and it underscores the high cost of Victor's actions.
Their journey continues. They travel through Holland by post due to unfavorable wind and river conditions, and then finally board a ship bound for England.
And in the late days of December, Victor catches his first glimpse of Britain. The iconic white cliffs come into view, and as they sail up the Thames, he observes the landscape, taking note of historical landmarks like Tilbury Fort, Gravesend, Woolwich, and Greenwich.
He's entering a new phase of his journey, a darker one.
And finally, they arrive in London. The imposing silhouettes of St. Paul's Cathedral and the Tower of London rise in the distance. This is it, the place where Victor intends to resume his horrific work under the guise of scientific inquiry.
The stage is set for the next act of this tragedy.
And it's clear that the consequences of Victor's choices are only going to become more devastating from this point forward.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 18, we're left with Victor standing at this incredibly agonizing crossroads. On one hand, there's this monstrous obligation he feels towards the creature he created.
This promise that weighs on him like a curse.
And on the other, there's this deep longing for a peaceful future with Elizabeth. A future his father so desperately wants for him.
A normal life. A happy ending.
But his decision to travel to England, while seemingly a step towards fulfilling one of these conflicting desires, is ultimately built on a foundation of lies and desperation.
A desperate attempt to regain control of a situation that has spiraled far beyond his grasp.
What's truly striking is the depth of Victor's internal conflict. The sheer weight of his secret is poisoning every aspect of his existence, his relationships, his perception of the world.
And the contrast between Victor's inner turmoil and Clerval's genuine joy and appreciation for life. It's a powerful reminder of the tragedy of Victor's self-inflicted isolation and suffering.
Makes you think, doesn't it? About the complexities of responsibility, about the unintended consequences of our actions. Is Victor justified in prioritizing his promise to the creature, even if it means delaying his own happiness and potentially endangering his family?
It's a question with no easy answers.
What might be the long-term ramifications of his choices, of this web of deceit he's weaving?
Food for thought.
It really compels you to consider the intricate nature of responsibility and how even actions driven by a sense of obligation can lead to the most devastating and unexpected outcomes.
And that, my friends, is the heart of Frankenstein.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Chapter 18. We'll be back soon to explore even more thought-provoking chapters from this incredible novel. Until then, keep those pages turning.
And those minds churning.